Welcome everybody to the seminar theatre. My name is David Jordan. I'm the deputy editor of the Mover magazine. It's my privilege to introduce the speakers today and try and keep everybody in order. I'd just like to point out that all the presentations are being filmed. So if there's a seminar that you missed yesterday that you'd like to have seen, or any later on today, if you go to the Movers and Stores website after the show, you'll be able to stream any particular seminar from that. So that's something new for this year. We'll also be reporting on all the sessions in the Mover magazine in the issues over the next few months. One thing you may also like to do with the Mover magazine, and just do a little bit of a commercial, is on the website. There's a search facility on there where you can search for any subject involving removals or storage. And if you click on that, you'll see everything we've written about that subject over the last 12 years. So you might want to put your own company in there and see if we've ever written about you in it, or even your own name if you like, and see. It's a tremendous resource. We've been writing this stuff for 12 years, and it's all on there, and it's the only one of its kind in the world. So that's the end of the commercial. But our first session today is all about self-storage, and self-storage is a tremendously successful industry, as we all know. Lots and lots of people have made millions of pounds out of it already. There's still lots more money to be made in self-storage. We're nowhere near saturated. If we compare the number of units in this country compared with, say, the States, it's something like, we've got about a fifth of the storage per head that they have over there. So lots and lots of room for people to make money in the future. And it sounds like money for jam in a way, doesn't it? You get your site, you put the units on there, or you have a site built and whatever, and then you sit back and watch the money roll in. Well, yeah, that may be true, but life isn't as simple as that, and there are pitfalls, and self-storage can involve, if you want to set one up, a big investment, and there are lots of opportunities to come a cropper if you don't know what you're doing. And so our speaker today is somebody who's been involved in, despite his youthful looks, has been involved in self-storage for about 20 years, both here and in his native Australia. I don't think there's anybody who knows more about self-storage than he does. And so he's going to talk to us about how to avoid some of the pitfalls that are out there waiting for the unwary. So please welcome our speaker today, the CEO of the Self-Storage Association, Rennie Schafer.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Right, so my presentation today is titled "Why You Should Not Get Into Self-Storage," and what I'm really trying to do is really talk about some of the things that people don't talk about self-storage, because obviously self-storage can be a very profitable business. Like we just said, it is one of these businesses where the challenge is in the setup, but once it gets up and going, it does kind of tick over. And lots of people have made lots of money out of self-storage, and if you look at the publicly listed companies, they've been making lots of money out of self-storage as well. But what I want to do today is really talk about the things that you're going to need to do if you actually do want to make money out of self-storage, because there are many people that actually start self-storage businesses up, and granted, they probably don't go broke, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily making the money that they can be making. And there are numerous pitfalls to be considered, and there are challenges facing this industry coming forward. So I really want to kind of go through this presentation. It probably is a little on the negative side in some respects, but I'm basing it that way just, again, to kind of prepare you for the things that you do need to think about if you are going to get into self-storage, to make sure you do it properly. So the number one thing I get told all the time is self-storage is recession-proof. You want to go into the self-storage during a recession because it is recession-proof. Well, self-storage is definitely not recession-proof. In fact, there's very few businesses that are recession-proof. The nature of a recession means it's going to impact a business. And there are certainly things going to be impacting self-storage. It's certainly being impacted by the rate of inflation. Now, this is the other thing. Self-storage went through the last recession relatively well. There was a bit of a downturn in occupancy. We managed to hold our rates reasonably well. So overall, we kind of basically treaded water, held our ground in terms of revenue rates. The big difference this year is inflation is a completely different factor. Because in the last recession, inflation was still only at 2 or 3%. It certainly wasn't at 10% and potentially rising as it is now. So inflation has a big impact on the industry, particularly in terms of cost of debt. Because most of these businesses have a degree of debt on them. Even if you're a leasehold site, you're going to be impacted by the rising lease costs because the landlord has a mortgage, so the lease costs are going to go up. So it is still a property-based industry, and if it's a property-based industry, it is definitely going to be hit by rising cost of debt. And that is starting to creep in at the moment. So some of these operators had a debt cost of about 3%. That debt cost is now coming up to like 6%. We're already seeing leasehold costs going up by 20 or 30%, and they're probably going to rise above that as well. So the inflationary pressures are definitely going to have an impact on the industry. And while the industry is resilient to economic downturns, it's certainly, there are things we can do to minimize our risk and minimize our exposure. It does take work. The industry does really well. It did fantastic during COVID. It did fantastic during COVID without the operators doing a heck of a lot, to be perfectly honest, because, the circumstances all kind of helped us. The life-changing moments came in. We were able to stay open all through the COVID exercise. But those businesses that are going to make money through the next couple of years during this recessionary downturn are certainly going to be the ones that actually actively manage the business. It's going to take more work. And that's something you need to kind of consider. And certainly if you are looking at getting into the industry and you're profit forecasting, if you look at the last couple of years, do not expect them to continue for the next 2 or 3 years, because the last few years during COVID were just quite simply exceptional. And they will not continue at that rates. Now, that's not to say the industry will not continue to be profitable. It certainly will. But if you want to look at getting into the industry and you're forecasting growth in terms of occupancy and revenue growth and things like that, go back to the 2018, 2019 data or even the 2017 data, because that's a more realistic picture of what the industry does during normal circumstances. And even that might be a little bit optimistic to what we're going to do for the next year or two, but it's going to give you a much better picture than what we did for the last 2 years, because the last 2 years were exceptional. And if you look at the results that people are putting, they're putting in like 14%, 15% year-on-year revenue growths. Occupancy rates are up, revenue rates are up. All that is great in terms of existing operators because they've got a great base, but it's just simply not sustainable moving forward. We cannot keep raising rates at 20% a year, even during an inflationary period. The reason we got away with it during COVID is because we had a huge increase in occupancy during the 2020 when the epidemic started. And then in 2021, operators basically really pushed revenue because their occupancy rates were pretty much full. Right, so at the moment, most mature stores have really good occupancy and really good rates, which is a great position to go into the recession. But if you're looking at coming into the industry, certainly don't expect those rates to kind of continue for the next few years. The other thing about self-storage is it is very, very, very location-based. And this is the biggest thing. If you are building a self-storage store or putting containers down or whatever it is, location is everything. Self-storage customers only travel about 10 minutes to a store on average. All right? So about 80% of your customers will be within a 10-minute drive or commute to your store. So bearing in mind you've got to cut out lakes and bridges and all the other things that you might have in your particular geography to circle your catchment to find out how many customers you've got in your area. And in terms of the location itself, there are many things that impact that. So self-storage is all about convenience. People want to be able to get their goods in, get their goods out. They want to be able to do it easily. So, you need to think about how your site's going to be located. How easy is vehicle access, for example? Can you easily get in there on the road? Do you have to kind of go halfway down the road and turn around? Can you easily get into the site? Can you bring a medium-sized truck into the site? Have you got enough space for people to be able to unload? Things like that in terms of vehicle access. Obviously, in terms of sloping and drainage, that's going to add to your construction costs. And again, ease of access. If you've got a sloped site, it's harder to build self-storage on it. You've got to escalate it. You've got to work out how you're going to get people up the slope, down the slope. You get drainage issues. So slope sites, they are more challenging. They can work, but they're certainly more challenging. They're going to increase the cost. And also, you've got to obviously think about competition. The industry is getting much more competitive than it used to be. So the industry is more mature in the UK now. We've got self-storage sites pretty much scattered all across the country, from small container operators in rural areas, through the Orkneys and all the rest of it. So there is more competition out there. So you can't just literally build it and they will come. The build it and they will come era was like the turn of the century when everybody was just starting this thing up. But now you do have to consider competition. And we've seen that in places like York, for instance. York had basically no purpose-built self-storage stores about 6 years ago, and they've put 4 brand new, huge stores of about 400 units in there in the last 3 or 4 years. And it has made a difference. Because the competition is fairly fierce, and there's a lot of space there to be filled up. So have a think about when you set these up what the competition in the area is, because it will definitely impact your business. Also, you want to think about demographics clearly, because self-storage is a personal product. So, who uses self-storage? Well, self-storage customers tend to be 35 plus. In fact, the bulk of them are even 45 plus. They tend to be in higher socioeconomic brackets. They tend to be in higher density housing. So, more houses per square foot. And they tend to be going through life-changing moments and things like that. So we do have families storing with us. We have people that are going through divorce storing with us and things like that. But think about the demographics in the area, because it's not a straight self-storage works so many per square meters per person, because it works completely differently on the demographics of the area. If you're in a fairly rural area with people spread out, slightly lower socioeconomic area, you're not going to get as much storage per capita as you will in a city, which is high density housing with potentially a higher socioeconomic and a higher earnings, more transient population and things like that. So it's going to work out. People often come to me and say, all right, what's the formula for how much self-storage you can fit in a city? Well, it doesn't work that way because of all these different variables around it, because of the pricing, the availability. Also, you've got to think that self-storage is a distinguished market now, in the effect that customers know the difference between a container storage and a purpose-built self-storage. And container storages and external storages attract a different customer to an internal storage. So a Big Yellow or a Safe Store or a SureGuard is not competing with a container operator because they attract a different customer. And again, you need to think about that when you're going into the industry, in terms of, what's your competition like, what's your demographics like, what container sites have you got, what purpose-built your sites, and all the rest of it. The other thing about self-storage is, you'll know this by driving around, is that one of the biggest advantages self-storage has in terms of marketing is its own site. So this is why people like to put sites on major highways. That's why they paint them bright yellow and bright orange and things like that, because they want them to stand out. So they want to make a presence in their local community. So, by branding your store, by making it more prominent, that is a fantastic marketing opportunity for you to tell people in your local area who you are and where you are. The thing to remember about self-storage is it's a needs-based product. So, you're not going to get everybody using it. You're only going to get people that use it that have a need. But you also find it's one of those products that if you talk to people about it, they go, I don't know anything about self-storage, until they need it. It's a bit like if you don't have a pet, you probably have no idea where the local veterinarians are in your area. But you probably drive past them all the time, but you have no notice of them whatsoever because you don't have a pet, so you don't care where a vet is. The same thing happens with self-storage. People drive past these buildings all the time. They don't take a lot of notice of them until suddenly they go, gee, daughter's coming home from uni. I'm going to have to put her back into the spare room. Where am I going to put all this stuff? Oh, well, there's that weird self-storage place we've been driving past all the time. I must look that up on the internet and check it out. So the use of your store as a signage is really valuable. And again, you need to really kind of think about that in terms of where you're going to site your business and what promotion you can get. And even if you don't have a main road store, and even if you can't kind of get that major exposure, you certainly need to know about signage. How are people going to find your store? If you're buried in the back of an industrial estate, how are people going to find you? Because that's what they want to be able to do. They want to be able to get their stuff in there, get it easily, ease of access, ease of finding. So location is crazy important in terms of self-storage. Even if you're in a secondary location, you really need to think about where you're putting your business. Sorry, I've picked up a cold as well, so excuse me as I go. The other thing that we need to talk about a little bit is debt, build costs, and fill up, because this is the other thing about self-storage. Like I said at the beginning of the game, the thing with self-storage is once you get it to occupancy, everybody talks about how great self-storage is and how I kick back and play golf and the money just rolls in, as I think what David was saying. And yes, there's some truth in that. But it's like anything. You only get to that point after you've done the work. The artist that sells the paintings for £1 million didn't sell his first painting for £1 million. He went through the pain of becoming an artist and then selling the paintings for £1 million. It's the same with self-storage. The pain is in setting it up, right? You have to find the site. You have to get planning for the site. You have to build the site. You then have to fill the site up. So it will take time to fill up. And during that time, you will be losing money. you know, because you will have all those costs you've invested in building it. You've still got your marketing costs, your staffing costs, all the other costs, but you're still sitting at 10%, 20%, 30%, 40% occupancy. It takes time to fill these things. Depending on the size of the store, it's going to take anywhere between 9 months and 2 years to get to the point where you're actually making money on it. Right? And you've got to factor that into the equation, because that's the big challenge. It's also the fact that self-storage is built on churn. So when we say it's built on churn, it's designed to have customers move in and move out. One of the advantages of self-storage is we don't have a big anchor tenant. So we don't have like a big retailer, we don't have a single tenant that can potentially move out overnight and suddenly cut our occupancy and cut our revenue. But what that means is it takes longer to build up our revenue and build up our occupancy, because we can't move that anchor tenant straight in straight away and have 50% of our revenue come in on day one. So it takes time to build that up, but it gives you strength once you get to the end, because it also means you don't lose big chunks of occupancy overnight. All right, so it's a slow build, gets to occupancy, and then it really starts kind of generating money. But it's also about the fact that a common fallacy in self-storage is everybody talks about occupancy. You know, we have a lot of members come into our association and come to our first events very proud and chuffed, coming in and go, oh yeah, I've got this self-storage store, I'm at 100% full, it's really doing really well, 100% full, very, 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 very happy, 100% full. And everybody looks at them and says, so you're really poorly managing your site, are you? Why are you at 100% full? Because nobody wants to be 100% full in self-storage. If you're 100% full, you have got nothing to sell. And if you're 100% full, you are not making as much money as you would if you are 80% or 90% full and managing your yields. So if you want to measure the success of your self-storage business, you measure it by your EBITDA, or you measure it by your return per square foot, not by your occupancy. Now, obviously, you're not going to be a very profitable store if you've got no customers, so occupancy will come into play. But you are going to be much more successful if you manage your business from the beginning about revenue growth rather than occupancy, particularly when you open up, because it's very easy to go, I need customers, I need to get through that process. But if you're managing your revenue, managing your pricing, getting as much as you possibly can for every square foot, then when you get to occupancy, that's when you're starting to make money. That's when you can go off and play golf and, you know, and let it kind of cruise on and all the rest of it. But if you're running on discounting, if you're keeping your prices low, you're getting yourself full, you'll ultimately get a business which is full, but not making as much money as it possibly could. And the thing with self-storage is it's a fixed supply product, right? Okay, I'll talk about containers in a little bit, but if you're talking about a purpose-built self-storage store, like a mezzanine or a building, once you're full, you're full. You can't just put more space on, you know? Maybe you've got another mezzanine, maybe you can fill that out, but then eventually that will be full too. And even if you want to put more space on it, it's going to take time. So because it's a fixed supply, it allows you to actually push revenue. That's the beauty of the business. But if you run on occupancy and you get yourself full, you won't have that opportunity to push revenue. Now, obviously, if you're doing a container store, it's slightly different, because you can actually just drop containers down, you know, and if you've got enough land, you can keep dropping containers down. Sooner or later, you will run out of containers, and you will run out of land, so there's that problem. But the other thing about doing that is that in terms of containers, if you just keep adding supply, again, you're not maximizing the revenue on your actual customers. You know, if you've got customers that are willing to pay more, you just keep dropping down more containers. You're not pushing your rates. You're adding supply to the market rather than necessarily controlling the price. So you really need to think about how you can maximize the revenue of your store rather than just maximizing occupancy. I think I've talked about the currents of inflation. Oh yeah, the other thing in terms of overgearing, during the last recession, the only businesses that went broke in self-storage were those that had too high debt, basically. So what happened is they had too high debt, the interest rates went up, the banks came in and said, or in the case of the last recession, they were actually overgeared, and the bank came in and said, well, instead of giving you 70% LVA, we're only going to give you a 60% LVA, you've got to come up with 10%. They didn't have the 10%, and you know, they had to flip the business. And usually some other more profitable self-storage business came and bought it, turned it around and ran it up. So you just obviously do need to be careful about your gearing levels. I would say as a whole, the industry has kind of learned from that, and the debt levels are a lot lower now than they were, you know, 7 or 8 years ago. Even the big companies have been shedding debt, so I don't think that's going to be as big an issue. And yeah, and obviously understanding those challenges of inflation, which I've already talked about. In terms of building, if you're building a self-storage store, these are the things you need to think about. Ceiling height. Ceiling height's crazy important, because it's all about, again, it's about A, access to your customers, and B, revenue. And this is why self-storage doesn't tend to work too well in retail parks and things like that, because their ceiling heights are built for retail, which is about 1.5 times what we want. You know, because you want about a 2 meter, 2.5 meter max ceiling for your customers to be able to use, but ideally you want to be able to stack them in. right? So if you've got, if you've got 7 meters, then that's great. You can probably even get 3 mezzanines in there or 3 floors in there. If you've got 5 meters, you're kind of stuck. You kind of get one in, but you can't really get that second one in. So you really want to think about ceiling height and how many mezzanines or how many levels of self-storage you can fit into your ceiling heights. Obviously, apex buildings, A-frame buildings and things like that give you challenges in terms of fitting into gaps and things like that. But ceiling height is obviously important. Also, corridor space. Corridor space doesn't earn us money, unfortunately. We can't rent the corridor space out. So how much corridor space you've got is obviously going to impact your return. So this is where the design's important. When you talk to people like Janice and things like that, they'll come up with a design plan which kind of maximizes your storage space and minimizes your corridors. But you've obviously got to factor that in with fire regulations and all the other things in terms of having access and all the rest of it. But if you look at your building, you obviously, the amount of storage space you can get into that building, taking out corridor space and things like that is important. The thing to remember about self-storage as well in terms of units is that generally speaking, smaller units give you a better return per square foot than big units because the pricing is not lineal. You will not pay twice as much, or you will not sell the unit for twice as much for a 100 square foot unit as you would for a 50 square foot unit. What you'll find is the 50 square foot unit, for argument's sake, might be £100 a month, while the 100 square foot unit might only be £80 per month, because that's just the way the pricing works. You pay less per square foot for a bigger unit, generally speaking. There are some exceptions, but generally speaking. So ultimately, we'd love to fill the place with all small units, but that's not usually what the customer wants. And so it's about getting this unit mix right. And this again, it can make a huge difference about how profitable your business is when you get that unit mix right. Another reason a lot of operators tend to fill their stores in sections, so they'll fill one floor and then another floor, because it gives them a chance to actually gauge what the customers want, so that they can then rearrange the unit mix for the next floor. But obviously, the other thing about unit mix is that larger units have bigger large units have bigger items, so you don't want to put large units on the top floor way away from the lift, because that just makes them really hard to use. So there's all these kind of things you need to think about unit mix, and it's not the kind of thing you can just sketch out on the back of a notepad one afternoon and go, here we go, we're going to build it. You've really got to give it some thought, because that's going to make a big difference. In terms of container parks, the biggest mistake I see there is absolutely no plan whatsoever for growth. So what they do is they go, I've got an acre site or a 2 acre site or whatever, I'm going to put down 50 containers, and they whack down these 50 containers right at the very front, right, nice and easy access, works really well, that's fantastic. And then as they grow, they start going, I'll put another 50 here, another bit there, another bit there, and sooner or later they get to the point and go, if I'd have thought about this, I probably wouldn't have put my first ones here, because now I've got no access to this part of the site, and I'm not maximizing my space, and I need to kind of move those containers to put those over there. Or if I want a double stack, if I need double stack, I need wider driveways, and I haven't considered that, so therefore I've got no space to double stack, and I've got no space to put my walkways and my staircases and things like that. And they get to the point where, because they've just been dropping these containers down, they've now run out of space. When if they'd have thought about it from the beginning, they probably could have got 20, 30, 40% more containers down, because they planned the thing right from the word go. So if you're going to build a container site or an external storage site, I strongly encourage you to look at your land and work out how many containers you can possibly fit on that, and plan it around that. You may not get to that level, but at least you then know you've got the ability to get to that level, rather than getting halfway down the line and going, oh gee, I wish I hadn't have put that container there because it's blocking where I want to put a driveway. So really have a think about your planning. Same thing in terms of access to the second floor. It works with stackable containers as well. We're seeing quite a lot of stackable containers now. We don't actually, Wheelbox have got an example of them over there, where we can put second smallest containers up on the top. But you've got to think about how you're going to get access to them, because obviously you need a stairwell, you need a wider area around them. If you've kind of put all your containers down in a single line with a minimum driveway height, you haven't got enough room then to put in walkways or stairways or things like that. Same thing happens in terms of purpose-built self-storage. People, generally speaking, don't like lugging their stuff upstairs. It's as simple as that. Even if you might have just 10 or 20 units that are up a set of stairs, you're not going to get as much revenue for those, because people just don't like lugging their stuff upstairs. They're going to want a lift. Right? So if you're putting a second story self-storage building in, you really need to think about a lift. Yes, they're expensive. Yes, they're a pain. Yes, they will take so much longer onto your construction project. But at the end of the day, you will get much more value from your upstairs units if you've got a lift in. Now, again, it's a balance. If you've only got 4 or 5 units upstairs, it's just filling space, that's fine. But if you're looking at any sort of kind of serious upstairs storage, in terms of internal storage, you definitely need to kind of put a lift in. Driveway construction is obviously important because people don't want to drive through kind of gravelly, potholed driveways full of water and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, think about how you're making your driveways, making them solid enough, drain them effectively. And also think about traffic flow, because traffic flow is important through your site. Again, particularly if you've got container sites and external storage, have a think about one-way traffic flows and things like that, so that customers aren't tripping over each other and parking in the middle of the driveway and blocking people going backwards and forwards and things like that. So think about how the traffic's going to flow through your site to make it more, make it easier for your customers. So operating costs. What does it cost to run a self-storage store? Well, running a self-storage store is actually relatively low cost, funnily enough, because all the money, like I said before, pretty much goes into the capital in setting it up, building it, and all the rest of it. Business rates are a huge issue for self-storage. And business rates, I'll touch on this later with containers, business rates also apply to containers. So don't think if you're a container store you're not going to have business rates, because business rates are applicable to containers if you're using them for the purpose of self-storage. Doesn't matter that they're portable, doesn't matter that all the other things are out there, but it will apply. And business rates, most people have just got their valuations last week, and the feedback I'm getting is business rates for most self-storage businesses have gone up somewhere between 40 and 60%. Because of the revaluations and because of the fact that government are now looking at how to get business rates back that they've lost through retail and things like that. So if you've got a self-storage business at the moment and you haven't gone and checked your valuations that came out on Thursday, I strongly encourage you to do so. And if you're moving forward, really have a think about the impact of business rates. We don't use a lot of electricity, we don't use a lot of heating and things like that, so utility costs tend to be fairly low. Lots of operators now are putting solar cells on to basically reduce their electricity costs altogether. Quite a few operators are now putting solar cells on the roofs of their buildings and actually feeding that back to their neighbours in a, what do they call, a pre-purchase agreement. So they're not actually putting it back to the grid, but if they've got a neighbour next to them that uses more electricity than they do, they put the solar on theirs and they feed it straight to their neighbour, and their neighbour pays them for the electricity rather than putting it to the grid at the rates you get there. So there's lots of kind of opportunities in terms of solar in self-storage, lots more opportunity to get a fairly good return on revenue on those. A lot of people putting solar on self-storage now are getting returns on that in under 5 years. Well, before it was like up to 7 or 8 years. Most operators now, with the cost of electricity and all the rest of it, can put a solar array up and pay it off well under 5 years, which is a good thing. I would talk about security. Security is obviously a big thing in self-storage, and really the security now, the problem with CCTV cameras is that CCTV cameras are fantastic at taking photos. So if somebody breaks into your store, you'll get these amazing photos of the person taking the goods out of the store and running off with them, but that doesn't do anything about the goods. And the reality is that self-storage crime is not a huge priority for the police, you know, because nobody was probably injured. It's possibly considered a corporate crime. So, you know, they might have these great pictures. They may even arrest the person, but the chances of you getting those goods back are fairly low. And from the customer's point of view, they're not particularly concerned about whether the person got arrested. They're concerned that their goods are no longer with them. So if you've got monitored CCTV, which is basically having a monitoring station where somebody's actually looking at the cameras all the time, or they've got motion detectors in and algorithms and things like that, this gives you the opportunity to actually prevent the crime rather than just get wonderful pictures of the criminals that did it. So really think about how you can be proactive with your security. So think about individual door alarms, think about CCTV monitoring stations, think about access control where you can actually pick up whether somebody's doing what they should be doing. For instance, in self-storage, you can put systems in which say this person's come into the store but they haven't actually accessed their unit, or this person's unit's on the first floor, why are they on the second floor? And again, if you've got a CCTV monitoring station, you can then look at the CCTV, see if the person's doing what they should be doing, potentially even talk to them through the intercom system. So really think about setting proactive security up, because that's the big difference in the industry now to say 10 or 15 years ago, is that that's the kind of security you're going to need, something that's more proactive rather than reactive. Cost to debt, I think I've talked about, and obviously marketing costs are the big OPEX cost for self-storage. How much are you going to spend on marketing? And you're going to spend more on marketing in the first period when you're in fill-up stage because you need more customers, but once you get to occupancy, you can actually ramp your marketing down a little bit, which again is why the business becomes more profitable as it gets to full occupancy, because once it's at full occupancy, you can actually start lowering your costs in terms of marketing and potentially even staff costs and things like that. So I touched on this before, revenue versus occupancy. And this is a big thing in self-storage because, you know, lots of people talk about occupancy. So like I said, 100% occupancy is not a good thing. We want to measure the success of the business with EBITDA or revenue per square foot, depending on, you know, they're basically the same. But revenue per square foot is essentially by saying, okay, of all my occupied space, what's the total amount I've got for storage on that, divide that by the occupied space, and you get a revenue per square foot. At the moment, the average revenue per square foot across the UK is, roughly speaking, £27. So it's £27 per square foot ex VAT. But in London it's up as far as 36. Even in the weakest markets it's probably only as low as about 19. So it will vary around. But you certainly want to be measuring that moving forward in terms of how profitable your business is, rather than necessarily about occupancy. The problem with filling on occupancy is it gives you a short-term gain but a long-term loss. And self-storage is not a short-term game. Self-storage is something you want to commit to 5 years plus to get the real returns on the revenue, because it's going to take you that time to build it up. The other thing you got to remember is adding more space makes you work harder. Adding more space has a cost. It has a financial cost in terms of the space itself. It has a financial cost in terms of management. Every customer costs you something. Right, so this is the thing with churn. Every customer costs you something. You've spent AdWords, you've spent marketing, you've spent staff in signing them up. It's not a huge amount, but it still costs you something. So every new customer you bring in is going to add a cost to you. So if you can make more money with less customers, why wouldn't you? And this is what it's about in terms of managing it. Pricing is not set and forget in self-storage. Pricing is not something you set at the start of the year and then don't worry about to the end of the year. Pricing is something you are constantly managing. I did a webinar yesterday in terms of dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is what most people in the industry are now doing. Certainly all the major operators and all the medium-sized operators are doing dynamic pricing, which means the prices are changing essentially daily. So as the market changes, as the demand changes, as the supply changes, the prices will change. And that's how they're maximizing their revenue. By saying, okay, as the store's filling up, we put our prices up. We know summer's coming, we're going to get more demand, we put our prices up. We know this particular person's coming from this particular location where they're a higher socioeconomic area, we're going to put our prices up. We know this person that's coming in and saying, I need storage this weekend, is going to be much less price sensitive to someone else who rings up and says, I need self-storage in 6 weeks' time. So you've got opportunity for pricing there. So thinking about your pricing is crucial in terms of maximizing the revenue on your business. And it's even more crucial as we go into this inflationary environment when the costs are going up and all the rest of it. So really think about your pricing policy. Your pricing policy is not, I'm always 5% cheaper than the competition. Your pricing policy is not, I'm always 5% more expensive than the competition, because the competition is not your business. If your pricing policy is related to your competition, you're basically saying your competitor knows your business better than you do. In which case, why don't you just sell it to him and be done with it? Your pricing should be based on your business, your data, your occupancy, your inquiries. Now, your competitor will probably influence those. If they suddenly do a mass promotion and do a month free or something like that, that will potentially influence you. But you will change based on your data, not just because you think it might happen. Best example of that is at the moment with the inflationary environment, we've got operators that are feeling a bit unsure about putting prices up. Oh, this inflationary environment, cost of living, we're a bit unsure about putting prices up, and so they're not putting prices up. We've got other operators that are going, you know what, I'm going to wait to see what the data says, and they're pushing their prices up. And more often than not, the ones that are pushing their prices up are finding the customers are actually relatively receptive to that, because their customers know everything's going up at the moment. Every single bill they get has a price rise on it. So it's not like it's unexpected. But again, they're measuring it on their data. So if they find their customers are moving out, then they change based on that, rather than just a hunch or a think or what my competitors are doing. So make sure you're doing your pricing based on your business and your business conditions. Yep, talked about pricing. Stagger price rises as well. That's the other thing. Don't put a price rise through at the same time every year. So don't kind of say I'm going to put every customer up on the 1st of July. A couple of reasons we don't do that. First of all, because if you put every customer up on the 1st of July, what about the customer that moved in March? You're probably not going to put them up. So therefore, they actually don't get a price rise every 12 months. They get a price rise every 15 months or whatever it is. The other thing is, if you put all your prices up at the one time, you've got no measure. So if you have actually stuffed it up, if you have put them up too much, if you do actually get people move out, you've applied that to your entire market, your entire portfolio, rather than staggered it. So if you stagger your price rises, if you put price rises up, for instance, every 12 months after a person moves in, so every March you look at all the people that moved in last March and put a price rise up then, it gives you a chance to measure it. It also gives you a chance to say, well, okay, at the moment I've got really high occupancy, so I might put my prices up a little bit higher for these guys, but coming into winter, maybe the things are a bit softer, I might not put my prices up. The other thing you're going to find when you put price rises through is people will complain about it. Not too many, but some will. But even if they complain, they probably won't move out because the barriers to moving out are actually quite high. And the people that complain about a price rise tend to complain about a price rise whether it's 5%, 10%, 15% or 2%. They just complain because they like to complain about price rises. The thing to remember though is they will potentially complain on social media. Right? They will potentially go into Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever else and go, geez, you know, Rennie Self-Storage placed second price rise in 2 years, 20%, you know, 10%, whatever, and complain there. Again, if you've put all your prices on all your customers up at the same time, you've suddenly got all that social media concentrated in one period of time. So instead of just having one person complaining buried amongst all the other great customer reviews you've suddenly got all your customers all complaining about, well, not all of them, but anybody that's going to complain about price rises, all happening about price rises at the same time. So that's another advantage of spreading those price rises out. But as a base, certainly every customer should be getting a price rise at least every 12 months. Right? Because that's the name of the game. Once customers are into the store, they appreciate the value of it, they have a need, and once they have a need, you've got much more flexibility on price. And again, this is how self-storage makes money, by putting price rises on existing customers, by using discounting to get people through the door, encouraging them to use the product. We find when we talk to people in the general public, when we ask them what they think the cost of self-storage is, they often think it's cheaper than what it is. But we also interview customers when they leave, and more often than not, they think it's fantastic value, even though they've had price rises, because it's the kind of product that people don't really understand. They don't see the value of it until they need it. And we know this as well because self-storage customers almost always come for a short-term need. Commercial customers aside, when we're talking about personal customers, they almost always come for a short-term need. So they come because they've had a death in the family, they're moving house, they're traveling, they've got someone returning home, you know, whatever the short-term need is. They say, I'm only going to need storage for 3 months or 4 months. Almost every single customer stays longer than they think they will. Hardly anybody that says they're coming for 3 months actually stays for 3 months. They almost all stay for 4 months or 5 months as a minimum, because people underestimate how long they need it. But the other thing you find out is that people come in for that short-term need, and then they find, you know what, I actually like self-storage. I like the fact that I don't have this stuff cluttering up my house. I like the fact that I can get it whenever I want. I'm actually not going to move my stuff back. And they end up staying for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, etc., etc. So they see the value in the product. So we have short-term customers and we have long-term customers, but most of them start as short-term customers and then they extend across. So again, that gives you opportunity to do price rising. It becomes a need-based product rather than a want-based product. Discounting is prevalent within the industry. You'd only need to go on the websites to see that. You'll see that there's lots of offers out there, you know, 50% off the first month, third month free, you know, store for 6 months, get a month free, all this kind of stuff. We discount to bring customers in. Like I said before, the trick is to get people into the storage store, and that's why we discount up front. But you discount for purpose. If you're full, then you don't need new customers, so you wouldn't be discounting. You know, you also need to think about when you're getting towards full occupancy. Well, when I say full, I mean 90%, not 100%. But when you're full, you know, you want to be looking at long-term customers. You want to be looking at how you can get customers to stay longer rather than keep churning through those short-term customers. So think about your discounting, and think about your discounting for purpose, and measure your discounting. Again, pricing is not set and forget. Discounting is not set and forget. Please don't paint in big bold letters on the side of your building 1 month, first month free, or £1 off the first month, because you've essentially locked that discount in perpetually. You know, and at some point you are probably not going to want to have that discount. Certainly during COVID, we had operators that were repainting buildings because they weren't putting discounts on anymore, because they didn't need to discount during COVID when the industry was so crazy good. So really think about discounting for purpose. Marketing. The thing about the self-storage industry is in the UK is it's still relatively immature. So there's lots of people that still don't understand what self-storage is. So if you can grow the market, you're going to have a lot more success than necessarily arguing over existing customers. And what I mean by that is if most of the industry's marketing budget is actually spent on AdWords or online advertising and things like that, and most of it's around storage keywords like self-storage near me, or storage in Farnsworth, or storage this, storage that. And that's all targeting people that are already looking for self-storage, which is great, and you're going to have to do that. But what about the people that are going through a life-changing moment that aren't actually looking for self-storage? What about the people that are actually thinking about putting their stuff in their mum's garage, or they've just got so much space, they've got so little space in their house, they don't know what to do with it? What about the people that are going through divorces? What about the people that are having babies? What about the people that are moving house? You know, how do you target those and get them to think about self-storage rather than just the people that are looking for self-storage? So that's what I say about don't just haggle for existing customers. target people for a need with self-storage, engage with your local community. If you want to be one of the biggest successes independent operators have over the major operators is they can engage with the local community. They know their local community. They know their business chamber of commerce. They know their schools. They know their sports clubs. They can really engage with the local community. So get involved with that. Remember, of course, like I said before, you're only looking at a 10 or 15-minute travel time, so that's where your marketing needs to be, very, very localized. Keep it in that 15-minute travel time. And obviously have a think about business versus residential, because about 25% of our customers and about 30% of our space are commercial, and the flip side of that for residential. So target your business customers as well as your residential. It's a completely different marketing campaign. You're going to get business customers through LinkedIn and chambers of commerce and things like that. You're going to get residential customers through Facebook and online advertising and sports clubs. So think about how you market to both markets. Just want to touch on container storage a little bit. For some of you might be thinking about setting up a container storage site specifically. I talked about this already. Business rates, don't be fooled. Self-storage containers are business rateable. Simple, end of story. I'd love to say they weren't. I'd love to be able to say to you, no, you don't have to pay business rates on them. It is possible you are not paying business rates on them at the moment, but that's only because the valuation office haven't realised that they're there and that they're rateable. But they are definitely rateable. We've had numerous cases to support this. Not only that, changes to the business rate system at the moment mean that come next year, it'll be your responsibility to notify the valuation office if you've changed your business. And by changing your business, that means adding more containers. So if you've got containers on your site and you think, well, I'm going to put 50 down now, I'm not going to be revalued for another 3 years, I'm not going to worry about it till then, it doesn't work that way. If you add more containers to your site, you have to notify the valuation office, they will revalue you, they will reissue your business rates notice, and you'll have to pay business rates on them. So definitely factor that into your pricing. The other thing is containers are not plant and machinery, so they will not be eligible for your 100% tax relief. So some of you might be thinking you can claim a container as plant. It's not plant. It's part of the business and it's earnable. The tax department have come down on container storage people and asked them for 5 years worth of tax relief back because of the fact they've made this claim and it is not justifiable. So business rates and tax relief will not apply to containers. I know they're portable, I know they're movable, I know all those arguments, but the bottom line is I can throw out all the case history that will tell you it does not work that way because they're being used for a different purpose. There's all sorts of rules about the fact that they've got to be on a certain piece of ground. The same applies to portable office buildings and a whole lot of other movable dwellings. They might be able to be moved, but the reality is you are not moving them. Even if you were moving them, you're using them for revenue generation, so it doesn't apply. I talked about the fact that they were easy to add supply, which limits rate growth. We find that the cost of container storage actually moves pretty similar to the container price. So when the container prices went up a couple of years ago, the cost of container storage went up. But as container prices have eased the last 9 to 12 months, container storage prices have come down again because people just whack down more containers. So, you know, they keep adding supply to the market. And while they keep adding supply to the market, it's harder to kind of increase rates. So if you're looking at your self-storage container store, again, think about how you can maximize your yield on your existing containers rather than just dropping down new containers. So certainly add new containers, but put your prices up at the same time and go from both ends. Security is super important in container storage. We've had quite a few break-ins in container storage recently because, again, operators tend to think, oh, it's a container storage, nobody's going to break into it. But that's not the case. We've had quite a few security issues in self-storage because they haven't had adequate security. They haven't had good perimeter fences. They haven't had proactive CCTV. And people have come in with grinders or whatever else they needed to and opened up these containers and taken them out. So have a think about your security. I've talked about planning correctly, and I think I've talked about business and residential. The other thing I just want to finish, kind of get towards the end on, technology. So this is the biggest change in the industry at the moment, is this use of technology. So we're seeing huge changes in the industry in terms of how people access self-storage. You know, we're seeing stores that are no longer having padlocks. They're having these electronic locks here. You can see in the picture. If you talk to Janice, they'll tell you about that in terms of their NAEC system, but there's a few other systems out there where people essentially access their storage unit with a mobile phone. Now the thing with this is it's very customer friendly. You know, the customers really like it. They don't have to worry about keys. If they want to give someone else access, they can literally just give them access to the app and say, hey, you know, you want to give your friend access to your self-storage unit. You can say you can only come in between these hours. You can see they've come in. The app tells you they've come in. You know, it's all very friendly in that way. but it is obviously going to be costly if you need to retrofit your business for it. So we're seeing quite a few stores putting it in now. It obviously opens up more opportunities in terms of smaller stores because you don't need a full-time staff member on site. You still need a staff member to come in and clean it and do lock checks and things like that, but you don't need a full-time staff member, so you can potentially set these places up in really small locations, rural locations, inner city locations, retail locations, things like that, where you wouldn't get a store with 200 odd units and things like that. The question's going to be, I guess, whether the customer, how much the customer values this, and in 4 or 5 years' time, whether customers are expecting all self-storage units to be like that, and for that matter, are they going to be expecting everything to be like that? Because we're already seeing Airbnbs and even hotels starting to use this technology, so that you just get the app sent to your phone, you turn up to the property, it opens up with your phone, or you get the QR code on your phone and things like that. We've even got some hire companies in Europe that actually allow you to pick a car up because it opens the car up with the phone app as well. So I do think this is technology you need to kind of think about, and certainly if you're building now, you need to think about how you're going to future-proof your business, because these self-storage stores will last you 30, 40, 50 years, but they won't if you don't have the right technology now, because in 5 or 6 years' time, you'll have to go through and retrofit them. So really have a think about how you're investing in technology now to kind of future-proof your business. And also, I'm going to touch on this a bit later, make sure you've got a functional and customer-friendly website. Proactive CCT, monitoring to your CCTV, using alarms. 24-hour access is not all it's made up to be. Okay, who needs 24-hour access to self-storage? Let's be fair. Who needs to be in there at 2 o'clock in the morning? So my suggestion to you is that 24-hour access is a selective thing. I'm not saying don't offer 24-hour access, but you don't give it to every customer. You kind of say, yes, we've got 24-hour access. If you want it, you can pay more for it. Or if you've got a certain need, you can apply for it. But you don't necessarily give it to everybody, because that's a much more secure way of doing things. Security lighting, again, make sure you got really good security lighting, particularly for external sites, container sites and things like that. Good locks, which I've talked about. Also, solid ID checks. So make sure you are checking the IDs of your customer, particularly important when you're doing it online. It's easy to check an ID when a person comes into the store, but if you're doing the whole sales process online, make sure you've got a system in place where you're doing a solid ID check. And when I say a solid ID check, I do not mean just send me a copy of your ID in a PDF or something like that, where I can basically just go to my wife's wallet and pick out her ID and send it to you and say that I'm her, and nobody would ever know. I'm talking about actually having a photo taken from your phone, using bank verification, using some other means to genuinely check the ID of the customer when you store online, when they take the contract online. Super important. It's a legal requirement. It's a requirement in terms of the association, in terms of their standard, and it's going to reduce the amount of criminal activity and bank fraud and all the other things you get. So really make sure you do that. And it sounds really simple, but a perimeter fence, having a fence around the whole store so that only customers can get into it. Right? Again, particularly for container stores and things like that, you don't want to have 6 containers on this part of the site and 8 containers over there and 10 containers there and other businesses scattered in between. It might sound like a good idea to start with, but sooner or later you're going to start realizing the container storage is actually making more money than all these other things anyway. And if you actually put them together and ran them as a proper business in a proper contained place, you'll get much more revenue, much better customers, and it'll be a safer place to store. So think about containing all your businesses, all your self-storage business in together. So I just want to quickly finish on websites. More and more customers, particularly obviously since the pandemic, more and more customers are coming to us online, so you've got to have a really good website. And online customers are definitely key. And so you've got to think about your website design. And thinking about website design is actually, it's about a different approach to self-storage, because what we see is we see lots of websites like this one here, all about doors and security. And you see self-storage websites with all these pictures of roller doors and CCTV cameras and talking about, wow, we've got amazing security and things like that. When you go on an airline website, you don't see a banner that says, we land every time. You don't see a banner that says, our pilots are trained. You don't see a banner that says, our planes fly in the sky. That's expected. You expect your plane to take off and land without killing you. That's what you expect. Even though sometimes it doesn't happen, that's what you expect. Self-storage is the same. The customer's expected to be secure. They know there's going to be a door. They know they're going to put a lock on it. This stuff isn't important to them. It's the stuff that's important to them is the fact that they're going through some life-changing moment. The stuff that they're storing is important to them. The reason they're storing is important to them. We know why customers choose self-storage stores. They choose them because they're close in location, and they choose them because they created a relationship with the brand, the store, or the person. Because the people are storing items that are important to them. The truth of self-storage is if I emptied every single self-storage in the UK and sold every item of good, I wouldn't come anywhere near how much they're paying for self-storage. But that doesn't matter because the goods are important to the person. The goods have an intrinsic value to the person. Every single person in this room knows when I say, what's the item that you own that your family look at you and say, why are you keeping that? You know, we all have this stuff. We all have stuff that's important to us. It's important to us from a personal point of view. Some of us can keep it in a shoebox. Some of us can keep it in a cupboard. Some of us can keep it in a self-storage unit. But some people use self-storage because their relatives have died and they've got to move the goods out because it's a rental or an old person's home or whatever, and they've got to put them somewhere and they've got nowhere to deal with it. And they'll put it into self-storage and it might stay for 3 or 6 or 12 months. And the value of the goods, they might end up throwing all those goods out, but they can't deal with that at that point in time. Those goods are super important to them, and they're looking for a place that understands that and understands the importance of their goods. So when you're designing your website, talk about the fact that you're not providing a storage solution, you're providing a solution to their life-changing moment. You're not providing them a roller door and locks, you're providing them a solution to their storage needs. And this is what we're seeing with websites now. This is Go Store, who've got some stores up in York and all over the place. Space Makers, life changers, you know, life-changing moments. You know, even here where we've got household storage and size guides, we've got pictures of people going through those actions, you know. It's all about the person. It's not about the roller door and the security and the locks. Set your website up to market to the customer, not to the person who built your self-storage store. So, you know, this is a cute one here. Manhattan Mini, which are actually owned by a company that own self-storage in the UK. The thing there, safe, secure, protected with minimal charges, just like Prince Andrew. You know, but that's the kind of marketing we're talking about. There's no padlocks on that. You know, there's a little picture here with a couple of boxes and a trolley on it. You know, but we're appealing to the customer. So think about the marketing messages you're putting out there. Think about how you're providing a solution to someone's storage needs, not just roller doors. And like I said there, appeal to your customers, not your businesses, not your builders, and not your investors. Your builders love to see roller doors. Probably your investors probably love to see roller doors and buildings and stuff like that, but that's not what's going to appeal to your customer. So really have a think about that in terms of your website design, and have a look at some of the really cool websites that are out there in terms of self-storage operators, because you'll see quite a few roller doors, but you'll see a lot of people really taking this approach and kind of going to town with it and having some fun with it. All right, almost out of time, aren't I? Questions? I covered a lot. I'm sorry. I see some note-taking, which is always a good thing. Any questions before I finish up? Oh, sorry, one last plug. You've probably already seen there's some brochures down there. Stephen, my colleague at the back there, if you are thinking about getting to self-storage, we are the Self-Storage Association. We can provide you with all the different tools, talk about the stuff I've talked about, but also one of the big things we've got is a standard storage agreement. So that's the agreement you sign your customers up with. It's going to save you a fortune in legal fees. It's been tested by trading standards and all the rest of it. We give you a manual advice to support that. So what happens if the police want to get access to the unit? What happens if a customer dies, breaks up, all that kind of thing, as well as marketing tools and all the rest of it. So if you are thinking about getting in the industry, please have a chat to myself or Stephen and hopefully join up.
Good. Anybody got a question for Rennie? So.
Optimal. Yeah, really good question, because if you'd have asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said anywhere between 200 and 600 units. And that's the optimal size if you want a staff member. But I think with this technology now, that's been thrown out the window. So you could potentially set up a store with 20 units in it, unmanned with the remote technology. You could set up 8 or 9 of those in a cluster and have a lovely little business. So I don't think there is an optimal size anymore. I think it depends on the business model you want to take. Is that all right?
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else got a question? Yeah, so the question was about dynamic pricing. So the way dynamic pricing works is it's basically tied into your website and tied into the CRM system. So it means that as the prices change, they will change on the website. And the really funky dynamic pricing systems are tied into your discounting and your existing prices as well. So for instance, if you've got a
couple of ways. Usually dynamic pricing is based on individual unit size, but in some cases what they also do is say, okay, if the occupancy of the store reaches a certain point, then the website will change and that discount will come off the website and not come back on again until the occupancy drops. Or you'll find that if you've got a certain store unit, a certain unit that's of a certain size that's, again, approaching full occupancy, the website will change so it will no longer promote that size. And it could even get to the point where you kind of book for a unit and it starts encouraging to upsize because it knows you're really small, got really low availability on smaller units, but a better availability on bigger units. So, you kind of go through the process and it starts going, oh, that lots of our customers have trouble fitting their stuff in, would you like a slightly bigger unit for only this much? So if you do it well, that's the kind of stuff that gets tied in. And it also, I think a really good thing about dynamic pricing is it takes the price away from the staff member because the pricing is dictated by the system. So it means the staff member can't kind of go, it's the end of the day, I'd really like this sale. Yeah, sure, I'll knock that price off it to get it through, because they can't, because the system tells them otherwise.
Good. Any more before we finish?
There's recently some investigation by the government into insurance and whether people who do self-storage can sell insurance. Did anything come of that?
Yeah, so, yes and no. So the FCA, it wasn't just about self-storage insurance. The FCA asked insurance providers like the brokers and the underwriters, to tell them which industries were selling insurance at a higher markup, and they were trying to work out which industries were putting a really high markup on self-storage, on insurance, and self-storage was one of those industries. But what basically we've done is just change the way we sell it. So now what you're going to find is moving forward, some operators are starting it now, but it's going to come in more next year. Rather than sell insurance as a product, what we're going to do is incorporate it into the storage. So we're pretty much going to say, if you want the premium self-storage package, it includes insurance. So it means insurance will be VATable rather than IPTable, but we'll still be able to sell it and we'll still pretty much have the same markup on it. We're just going to sell it slightly differently. But yeah, certainly there's heaps of insurance brokers out there. If you talk to them about that, they'll walk you through it. But very astute, you're right, there is changes.
Good.
Other questions?
Okay, I think we're just about out of time. We've probably time for one more if anybody has one. No? I have a question. If I'm thinking about setting up a self-store, can I join the Self-Storage Association beforehand to get advice on how to go about it?
Short answer is yes. I would encourage you to join us before you open your doors, because there's lots of things we can teach you that you should do before you open. And we have members that come to us, after they've been open for 6 months, and we tell them things and they go, gee, I kind of wish I knew that before I opened, because I would have done things slightly differently. So yeah, you can join us anytime. We're actually changing our membership structure at the moment, so we're about to release like a kind of a new entrance pack membership. So it basically means if you're just thinking about getting in the industry, you can join this way, and we'll give you kind of a certain level of information to kind of help you go. But certainly once you're kind of at the planning stage, I would encourage you to join us, join the association then, because we can help you through that planning stage. We can give the information you need in terms of traffic. Often we find with planners, they kind of think self-storage is going to generate all this traffic. So we've got traffic data that'll help you with planning. Again, we've got the legal agreement. I've got lots of things that you'll need before you open. So I would encourage you to join beforehand. And make the most of your membership.
Great. Thanks very much, Rennie. Rennie's always very, very, very good value. You get solid information at 1,000 miles an hour with lots of enthusiasm and expertise. So thanks very much for that. And of course, there is a self-storage association stand.
We've got a booth
here,
just
so
over
you
back
can
there.
come and go along and talk. And don't forget, if you want to watch the presentation back, it will be on the Moves and Stores website in a couple of days. Thanks very much, everybody.